Hey, my name is Katie Pijanowski, and I'm a certified life coach and motivational speaker, and I'm here to help you unlock your true strength so you can create the life of your dreams. I teach you my best tips to master your mindset, create confidence, and empower yourself to take back your life. It's your time. This is the Mind and Body Strong podcast. Hello, my friends. I hope you are doing fantastic today. I am in my usual podcast recording spot. I think I've mentioned this a couple of times. I usually sit in my closet to record these episodes. It definitely has the best sound system. When I close these little doors on my closet, it's like a little sound bubble, and I can just do my podcast and not be bothered, and it's fantastic. So little knowledge about that. I actually had a friend of mine from my full-time job reach out to me about how impressed he was about how I started a podcast. And looking back, I remember having so much fear around starting a podcast. I can't do it. I don't have the skills. Where do I even start? These were all things I was thinking about. And looking back, I remember that I just had such a message in my heart that I wanted to share. And I just taught myself how to do the very basic things on YouTube. And that's literally what I did. And I still, to this day, record most of my episodes on my iPhone in the voice memos. It's not fancy and it's not perfect, but it's getting out there and it's impacting lives. And I love hearing how it's impacting all of you and how you are using the information on this podcast. It truly just sparks a light in my heart. So if you are loving all these episodes, it would just mean the world for me if you took a few minutes to write a review on iTunes or Google Play or Spotify, wherever you might be listening to this podcast. It would literally mean the world to me, and I would love to start reading some of those and sharing some of the reader reviews with you guys on the podcast episodes so that we can talk about those or even cover additional questions. So just a little start to this podcast, but I really want to start talking today about where your energy flows, your attention goes. And where your attention goes, your energy flows. It's like this back and forth, right? So your attention on whatever it is. So for example, attention on the podcast and starting the podcast. If I would have stayed in the attention of being confused, of not knowing what to do, of making it perfect, I would have been in this energy of inaction, this energy of feeling overwhelmed, this energy of feeling negative. But because I had such a big message in my heart and I knew that speaking that really, really means a lot to me, I knew that I had to find a way. And so I shifted my attention to really focusing on the positive things. And I want to share with you a 3-step process that really helps me to be able to shift my attention so that I can get back into the flow of positive energy. And this can really be done with anything in your life. I always teach all of my clients that how we do one thing is how we do everything. And it's so true. I've seen it happen with so many of my clients when we're tackling, say, a health goal. And we're working through that piece by piece, putting small pieces into place, following through on them. And you start to see that it just starts to naturally impact so many other areas of your life, which is so amazing. And that's why I just think health and life coaching is something that everyone should experience, because it really does open up your awareness to all these things that are possibilities in your life, because you're making strides in, say, your health or your relationship with money. And now you feel like, okay, I did this thing over here. Now I can take this over here to my relationships, and it really does carry over. So this process is going to really help you no matter what you're trying to overcome, to shift your attention to that positive energy so you can move forward. Because most of the time, what I find is if we're sticking in that negative energy, we're most likely going to find ourselves in inaction, which is not very beneficial to us. So let's start by talking about our step number 1 for this process, which is honest awareness and acceptance. This one I remember specifically when I was going through healing my disordered eating. I was binge eating out of control. I had just gotten out of a 6-year relationship, and I was really struggling with all the emotions that I had inside my body. And so I just turned to food to start to cope. And I remember the thoughts in my head saying, this is only going to be short term. I'll start getting this together and working through this on Monday. How many of us have ever said that before, right? And I would always beat myself up whenever this action of binge eating would occur. I would be in my car, just gotten back from the store, and I'm literally just eating handfuls of popcorn and ice cream and just numbing the heck out of myself, trying not to feel the pain. And I remember being in my counselor's office, one of my first counselors that I had encountered, and I remember her saying, the first piece of moving through this binge eating is just being aware that you're doing it. And I literally looked at her and I was like, what? Like, give me a step-by-step process and tell me what to do. And she was like, no, you just have to be aware that you're eating all the Oreos, and be like, that's interesting that I'm eating this whole bag of Oreos. And I was like, what? I've been so used to for so many years, this process of dieting and going through these strict, rigid rules. And if you fall outside of it, you're somehow a bad human. And I was like, you're telling me that I just need to be aware of the fact that I am in this process of binge eating and aware of the feelings that I'm feeling and just fully, wholeheartedly, lovingly accept that. And she's like, yeah. And that just blew my mind in the beginning of my transformation. That was really a big eye-opening part of it. I was like, oh, I don't have to force myself to change. I just need to start being aware of what's really going on and stop avoiding all this pain so that I can prolong it for later, because really that is what buffering does, buffering of any form. Food, alcohol, scrolling social media, taking unnecessary naps. I used to do that too. And it's just prolonging this pain that we're feeling. So when I was able to be aware of what was actually going through my mind and my body during these episodes of binge eating, and really get honest about what was going on and just ask myself with loving kindness, hey, Katie, what's going on? What do you really need right now? Is it this whole bag of popcorn? Or is it a walk? Or do you need to call your mom or a friend? And I really started to just kind of unravel these things. And it really led me to being able to fully accept where I was in the present moment and stop beating the heck out of myself for where I might have been in the past or where I thought I should be in the future. I wanted to share this quote with you also that I found, and I thought this was super powerful. It says, acceptance is like the antibiotic that prevents past rejections or failures from turning into present-day infections. Whoa. I'm going to read that one more time. Acceptance is like the antibiotic that prevents past rejections or failures from turning into present-day infections. Wow. Because how often do we do that? We take all of this past rejection and, I haven't been able to do that in the past, so why is it going to happen today? And we're taking all of these past experiences and carrying them on our backs to the present moment and letting that infect our present and determine our destiny. And it's just crazy. All of those past rejections and failures are what has helped you become stronger to get to this moment that you're in right now as you listen to this podcast, to be able to fully accept and be aware and acknowledge how much you have come through, how much you have conquered, so that you can realize that you are strong enough for the next task. That's what I've really found through this. So honest awareness and acceptance, and really acknowledging all of that. Okay, so number 2, forgiveness. Ooh, How many of you were like, oh no, not forgiveness? And what I mean by forgiveness is not just necessarily forgiveness of other people, forgiveness of past rejections and experiences you might have gone through, but especially in this process, forgiveness of yourself. I often say to many people I'm talking to when they're in this negative space and focusing all their attention on something that had happened, maybe in the past, is that, you're just doing the best you can with what you have in that moment. That's it. We're always just doing the best we can in that moment with the resources we have and trying to cope with whatever emotions are coursing through our bodies. So what would happen if we just decided to forgive ourselves for all of that? And that was part of my journey, is forgiving myself for turning to food, forgiving myself for not wanting to face the emotions and taking more than 9 months to really fully process that. Forgiveness to the experiences I was going through, forgiveness of the breakup I was going through, forgiveness of my parents for the different behaviors and habits that I picked up from them that were maybe not serving me anymore. And just massive, massive forgiveness. So as you go through this process and you're starting to be aware of things that you might want to shift your attention in your life, and you're fully accepting where you're at and how you can take that first next step, that best next step for yourself, really take some time to write yourself a list of forgiveness. And I highly, highly recommend that you write this down. Writing all of this down just does something in your brain where it just really registers, and there's something about emptying your brain onto a piece of paper and looking at it and being able to just separate those thoughts from yourself that has been so transformational for me and everyone I work with. Okay, so number 2 is forgiveness. Number 3, gratitude. Gratitude is something I practice every single day. And I've noticed that when I fall out of practice of taking out my journal and writing down 5 things within the last 24 hours I'm grateful for, the small things, like someone smiling at me or someone sending me a really kind email, just little things like that. I find when I'm out of practice with that my days are just dragging. My attention's not as positive as it usually is. But when I wake up and I put my attention into finding all those little pieces of the last 24 hours that were joyful and brought me energy and made me feel positive, that's when I really can start to shift my whole day into that kind of focus. It's so powerful, and I highly recommend, again, that you write these down or even just share them with a loved one. Sometimes I'll do this with my boyfriend when I wake up, and maybe on a weekend when I don't bust out my journal, and I'll just ask him, like, what are a couple things you're grateful for this morning? And we kind of share back and forth. And so sometimes it's just something, if I don't write it down, I'll share it with someone else. So let's go back over that little process of shifting your attention so you can shift your energy. Step number 1, honest awareness and acceptance. Number 2, forgiveness. Number 3, gratitude. Very, very simple steps. And when you start to gain that awareness of, oh crap, I'm in this negative energy, I'm not really going where I think I want to go, because remember, our thoughts create our feelings, create our actions, and our results. When you can be aware of first that thought process or the action or the feeling even, then we can start to shift our attention to what we really want and ask ourselves those questions. So that is super, super valuable. Okay, friends, I hope you got a lot from this episode and that you're going to use this little process whenever you need to shift your attention to the positive things in life and go forth and do amazing, amazing things. I'll see you on next week's episode. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Mind and Body Strong podcast. You are what makes this movement and message possible. If you loved this episode, share it with a friend, a coworker, a family member, or take a screenshot and share it on your favorite social media platform and tag Mind and Body Strong. To learn more about coaching and courses to help you take your journey to the next level, visit mindandbodystrong.com.